Everyone, I'm Billy Hale, and I wanted to put together a video that just kind of goes over how leather is tooled, all the steps you have to take, the processes, and go over the way I do it. I definitely have places that I start. I work all the way through those places and move on to the next step. So let's start with beveling. Beveling is usually the first thing I do. Some folks do not start here, but I always start with beveling, and for me it's one of the harder parts because it's not very artistic, although it could be, I guess. It depends on how you look at it. But for me it's a piece of the work that just has to be done before I can really get going on the stuff I love. So let's sit back while I bevel this piece of leather. This is I believe it's an 8 or 9 ounce piece of Herman oak, and originally this was going to be for a gun belt, but a friend of ours, Kevin Welch, was having a birthday party, and I thought, well, let me try to make a guitar strap. So the concept was kind of a guitar strap that was created and built like a gun belt. And then you can see how that turned out at the end. So I'll stop talking and we can watch the beveling occur. So the trick to beveling is that each time you hit that mallet, you're creating an indentation or the stamp. And so what you want is a smooth line or a smooth flow of indentation. So what you don't want is a square and a square and a square and a square. And the way you're supposed to do it is float that tool over the leather and then hit, move, hit, move, hit, move. And the more you do it, the better you get, the faster. Almost as in this video. Now what you're seeing here is sped up times 8. So I'm obviously not this fast. They do have machines that pneumatically pound the leather like this. You just put your stamp in and go at it. And that actually is how it would look this way if you had one of those machines. I don't. Plus, I kind of like the idea of tooling the leather like they did in the 1850s, 60s, 70s, 1880s. So I do it by hand. And after you do this a few thousand times, you'll be really good at it. Basically what we're really doing here is creating all floral leather design, and tooling is creating depth and making everything look three-dimensional. So what we're doing is we're pushing the background layer down and we're bringing your floral cuts and design up. And then we'll go farther and farther with that with each step that we take. And so for me, beveling is the first step, and now we're going to move to a next step soon when I finish these last few bevels. Shading for me was kind of tricky. I couldn't figure out exactly how to get it right, and I'm still learning, of course, but the first thing I did is found a shader that I liked, and this is a crosshatch shader, so it's not smooth, it's not single line, it's got lines going both ways. And this produced the most color for me, as you can see as I hammer there. The other trick is whatever direction you're flowing towards, pick it up on that end, and that'll allow that tool to move that direction and give you a nice smooth imprint. The other thing I would say is be aware of the distance between your shade and the outer edge of whatever you're carving there. You want to leave a uniform distance. And just go look at people you really like or carvings that you like. Do a little Google search and see what's out there, and then try to mimic whatever style it is that you like. That's exactly how I learned how to do this. It's kind of my favorite part, as you can hear me chittering away about it here. But for me, this is a pretty artistic part of carving the leather. You kind of get to pick what veiner you want to use on a leaf or a scroll, and it's kind of like your palette of tools. You get to figure out, do I want to use the same veiner on every leaf? Do I want to use a different veiner everywhere? And I do a little of both. Um, the real trick here, though, is you need to be uniform between your stamps. And you also, I see here, mine look a little flat to me, but you want your stamps to point towards the tip of the leaf. You want it to kind of move with the flow of the line. This is especially important on these really curved parts, where not only does it have to be uniform as you move along, and then it's going to start to turn with the circle, and it's always going to point into the center of the circle. So as you move, you got to be uniform, but also get everything pointing the right direction. Another thing to be aware of is you're not using the whole tool, you're only using the inside. So you have to hammer on the inside and be soft on the outside. When you have a leaf like that, you want to fill up the entire blank spot that's left in that area that you're stamping in. So you may start out with small at the bottom and then get longer and longer the wider the leaf goes. And usually the leaf's going to taper back down, and so you have to tilt it a little more to get a shorter and shorter stamp in there. So it's real tricky. It's like painting almost, except you've got this mallet, a stamp, and some moist leather. These are my favorite, and these are the hardest for me, because you really can mess them up quick. And if you mess it up, you either have to live with it or start over. And I would hate to start this belt over. Strap. So here we go. This is the trickiest part. You want to leave a place in the center for a punch. And where you put that circular punch also is kind of tricky. It doesn't necessarily have to live in the middle. It can live kind of towards the edge sometimes. One more thing I'll say is I've thought I've ruined a piece of leather, or I've tooled it and it just looked terrible, or I cut it and I thought I cut it terribly. And instead of stopping, I just kept going. I always think, well, I'll learn, I'll keep going, and I'll be better on the next one. And when I finish, almost every time I think, this looks pretty great, and I've never had anyone say, hey, this looks terrible. So I guess my point is just keep hammering. Even if you think you made a horrible mistake, uh, feel free to keep going and see what you get when you're done. You might really like it. Veiners and things like that on these leaves. And this is just a little, you put this at all your end cuts. Called a stop, and it kind of gives your leaves a cleaner look there on the cut, a more kind of a turn. Then after a stop, you want to, let's see what I'm doing here. You want to use a mule foot, which is more of a style, I think, than making it look like a flower. I'm cheating. I'm using a multi-mule foot, but I just really like the way it looks. So then you verify that you've got all your little cuts. And so now I'm sharpening my blade, my swivel knife, and these are decorative cuts. Have to be the hardest, trickiest thing of all, because you're cutting back into your design. Some of this stuff you've stamped, and so when you go to make a really clean turn, since it's normal leather at one point and stamped down at another point, my turns don't always come out clean, which drives me crazy. That's a modeler. That will save you sometimes if you make a bad turn. And then, you did all this work, and now you're carving it with a knife, and it just doesn't seem intuitive to do that. But after you get all your cuts in, which I'm blocking with my hands, but when you get all your cuts in, it really makes the whole piece. It brings it to life, I think. And they also say your cuts are kind of your signature. So you can start to tell who's designed what leather based on the cuts they're using, which is pretty interesting to me. So I've tried to develop a few things that I do on every piece. Like on my flowers, I do double indentations all the way down. And I also like to make little triangular nicks that follow the direction of the scroll. And I want to touch on that on this next segment. So I just want to say, you just saw me using the modeler again, correcting some mistakes. When you cut a line, I'm kind of going back here to the last one because we have plenty of time to talk about what I'm doing here. But when you do your decorative cut, your cut always has to come back to the point of origin. So you'll see that all these leaves, all these flowers, everything is coming from a point of origin. If you've got your swivel knife and you're doing a decorative cut, that cut always must ultimately point at the origin of all this floral work that you're doing. So here is the most tedious and craziest part of what I do. Some people use backgrounders that you can just randomly tap and you get a background. But I started using a single seed because my wife said, boy, that looks good. And I thought, oh my gosh, um, it's maddening. As you can see, it's like a typewriter, except you're typing zero over and over again in various places. I have had pieces of leather where I was like, it looks pretty good. And then after I did this process, it just looks so much better. So it certainly is a lot of work to do it this way, but I really think it's worth it. The chirping in the ground is a podcast that I was listening to help me pass the time. So there you see me start on one edge and then go up to the turn there and start there and then fill in the center. That's one way to do it. Another way is to start at your bottom line there and then work your way up one line at a time. You may get into a place where your cedar won't fit there between your last line and whatever it is you need to seed next to. So sometimes I'll use just a smaller version of the cedar to get into tight angles or to get farther down a line that this guy won't fit into. I've tried to go bigger with my cedar and it didn't work. It didn't look right. Smaller would be crazy. And I believe this is a 701 cedar. You could try and see what works best for you. This really takes oils and antiquing really well, which you'll see here in a minute. So I could talk about that real fast. The what I do when I'm done with these is I use bag coat, Bagkote. It's made by Beveling, and it's the original recipe used on postman's bags to protect them from the weather. And the thing I like about it is it gives it the leather color, but not a lot of color, so it's kind of a light tan. And so I let that dry, and then I hit it with Beveling's Antique Dark Brown, and basically you rub it all into every crack, every nook and cranny, and then you immediately wipe it off. So it does two things. It shows off all your cuts and your background and all that stuff, really makes it pop. And then it also tints, I find, the leather. Even though I've covered it once in bag coat, it still turns the leather a little brown. And I like it. I think it looks great that way. I should have said this at the start, but the reason I did this is because I could not find a video that showed someone tooling leather from start to finish. And I left out cutting the pattern, but this is pretty close. So I was hoping this might help somebody out there just to figure it out, get a good look. The other reason I shot this video was for people who asked me if I burn this in with a burner. I thought, man, they don't know what's going on here. Maybe they think I have a giant stamp and I just hit it once and it comes out that way. So I wanted to show. So here we go, finished product. Started out with a blank piece of leather and we have this, which I think looks awesome. And I can't wait to get more tooling under my belt. I'm not a 30-year veteran or anything like that. I really just started and I'm trying to practice the way the traditional leather toolers did it. So now we'll take a look at the finalized piece of leather, what you get after you put in all your hard work. Here it is with the antique and the bag coat and looking good. I used a boot off the cover of one of Kevin's albums to put on the front of the strap. And then finally we get a shot of KW wearing the strap. So that's it, man. I appreciate y'all watching this. Hopefully it's helped somebody who's trying to learn how to tool or just trying to check out how people tool leather. I'm Jim T. Graham, aka Billy Hale. You can check me out at billyhale.com for future pieces. I'm hoping to do more tutorials. Thank you very much. Have a great day.